As I mentioned at the start of the show, we have a guest joining us in studio. He is sitting right here. I'm so happy he's here. Well, whoops, I've got my papers in order. Well, I'm so glad you could join us today. Welcome, Chris Ekstrom.
Thank you. Hi, Debbie. Great to be here with you.
Glad to have you here, sir. So I'll tell you briefly, Chris Ekstrom is running for U.S. Congress in Texas for Congressional District 13. And I was looking at your district. I'm going to get to that in a moment. It is bigger. This is one congressional district in Texas, bigger than 13 states. 13 other states are smaller geographically than this district. One little point. But by way of background, very quickly, Chris Ekstrom is his description, conservative Christian Trump Republican, identifies top issues in this race for him as a pro-life. I can't find my, you had pro-life and, okay, you can tell me, what are your top issues? Why are you running?
Well, the reason that I really got in this race, it gets right to the point of it, and that is this is the most conservative district in the United States by general agreement among political people, and there was no conservative running. So I have done a lot of activism, and I've been involved in helping a lot of other people get elected, Texas and otherwise. And I looked at it and I thought, this is ridiculous. We can't have this district of all places with a sort of establishment moderate type. And so I got involved and got into it because I am a real conservative. No doubt about that.
No doubt about that. I will tell you very quickly, my friends, this is a district that was represented by Mac Thornberry in Congress in Texas for since 1995. So it's like almost 13 terms, right?
Yes,
13
26
terms.
years, I believe.
Yeah. So 13 terms in Congress, Mac Thornberry, and as you were just hearing a moment ago, the most conservative district in America. So you need to have, we ought to have a solid conservative Republican in that race. And by other way, a quick background of Chris Ekstrom, because I want to be sure and tell you who he is. I've actually known him in politics in other contexts, but he's a strong, firm, clear-thinking, articulate conservative. He has a business background. After college, he helped lead a large construction company, upgrading digital cable networks. He worked his way up to vice president of operations of that company. He's been an entrepreneur for 25 years and is president of Ekstrom Properties, which is a successful commercial real estate investment firm. So now you have a business background.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And
I should say Debbie. You're right. That's better, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I can go with Debbie. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I do, and that's an important part of why I think I bring something different to the table.
Okay, so I want to tell you, on this last night, I don't know if you realized when I was talking about, but last night we had a forum for CD32 right here in where you are, or actually where I live anyways, CD32, and there were 5 candidates, and I'm telling you, the room was packed. I mean, 300 seated, packed to the gills along the walls, in the lobby. People had to listen out in the lobby.
Good.
And the energy, what people are really, I think, standing up for is they want to hear someone who is, in some degree, echoing what President Trump is saying. This is a good and noble country, and we're standing up to restore it. So you say you're a solid conservative. What do you think the top issues are facing America in 2020?
Well, I think getting the Trump agenda back online and on where it should be. We lost 2 years of the first 4 years with this nonsense. The Russia hoax and the sham impeachment. So we are, they've disabled us, which is what the Democrats do. They're obstructionists. We have some weak elements in our own party that didn't do what they ought to have done either. But fortunately, we came through. So I think we need to get this wall built. I think we need to defund Planned Parenthood. If we get control of the House back, there can be we cannot accept excuses. Paul Ryan should have got that done. He totally failed. He completely backslided on all of his promises over a long, long career. That's just a fact. And so the people that we send there next time should be held to a very high standard. Now, will we get control back this time? I don't know. I hope so. I think President Trump's going to do better than some people expect. But if we don't get it this time, we're getting it next time. And if we don't do what we're supposed to do with it, whenever we get it, it's going to be trouble in River City.
Well, I feel there are many Republicans disappointed because in the first 2 years after President Trump became president, we had majority in the House. We had the Senate majority, and we didn't repeal Obamacare. We did some things with Obamacare. We didn't repeal it. We didn't build the wall, and we didn't take that strong step many people thought we would do with respect to protecting life, to stop the complete disabling of funding, public taxpayer dollars funding for for abortion. We didn't step up and do
I don't
that.
want my tax dollars used for abortions, period. It's ridiculous, and we have gotten this far down the road. And so you have to have somebody to be held responsible. President Trump has steadily moved, pardon me, in the right direction, and Paul Ryan is to blame, period. If you want to blame one person, and we should, Paul Ryan. So he's gone, and now we're gonna pick another one eventually. It's either going to be McCarthy, probably, Scalise, or Jim Jordan. I think it's pretty obvious where I tilt towards. But whoever it is, I really don't care what their excuses are. If I'm there in the Congress, I will be right up front and center, holding them to account every day on TV.
Okay, so you are pro-wall, clearly.
Yes.
You want the wall built.
Yes.
On immigration, do you think we need to do, I guess I was supposed to say, there's a term that sounds so leftist, so I'll try a better term. Do we need a major redo of immigration policy in this country?
If we had a major redo of immigration policy, we should have a moratorium on immigration. How about that? And then we'll just get people processed who have legally gone through the process, who have been slowed up in their legal pursuit of a green card or full citizenship. And then we'll go back to the drawing board, if that's what we did, and take a look at the 1965, I believe, legislation. And we can just redo that completely because, frankly, it's been a failure. And it has not been good for America. And we're now putting America first. So whatever the needs of America are with regard to immigration and some other considerations, that's what we should be doing. I do think we should actually overhaul and look at our whole immigration system again after a moratorium, though, if we're going to do it.
Yeah, I love the moratorium idea, and I know the estimates wildly range. Some people say there are 11 or 12 million people living in America with no legal right to be here. Others say it's more like 20 or even 30 million. Whatever the number is, it's a lot of people already in America with no legal right to be here. And the idea of shutting off immigration until we figure out who's here, process them, make a decision about what their legality is, what their place is, it's a great idea. So what do you think about the DACA people? Do you think that on immigration, the DACA people should be given a path to citizenship?
No, I don't. I think that amnesty and the DACA so-called plans are typical of the wishy-washy alliance between Republicans and all the Democrats. And those Republicans basically say one thing at home and then do another when they go to Washington, right? Which is why a lot of our Republicans, and I heard your opening statements about people being upset about this and then getting sort of disenchanted, not wanting to get involved. Well, that's hardly should be a surprise to us, right? Now, people should continue to get involved, and people should come out, and they should primary those rhinos who have lied to them. That's what they ought to do. And they should always vote and find on the ballot the people that you can vote for in good conscience. But, this is a result of a big, long cycle, and it's not going to be cured by one cycle. It's probably a two-cycle event with regard to immigration. It'll probably be imperfect, but we can't accept the old compromises and the edging towards amnesty that the group of eight, gang of eight or whatever, they're no longer with us. Many of them. Mr. Flake has gone on to back to Snowflake, where he came from.
The aptly named, I always call him the aptly named Jeffrey Flake. Okay,
he was great.
Speaking of primaries, this is an interesting thing because, primaries, I love that we have them. I love that people can step up. But you and your district, Texas CD 13, if this is still accurate, you have 15 people in the primary?
15, yeah.
15. Okay, and this is because it's an open seat. The Republican is retiring. And
right.
So, a lot of people, if they ever thought about politics, this is their time.
Right.
But you're doing a lot of talking to people. I know there's kind of a top five people are looking at as really the likely winners, and now you're in that top five. So when you talk to voters, what do they care about? What are their big issues that just drive them to be involved in the primary?
Once again, the wall is a very big issue up there, and the perception that President Trump has been thwarted, and in some cases, really worse than thwarted. To some degree, it's a soft coup. Undermined and a soft coup. I mean, this impeachment was completely frivolous. The impeachment process itself is sort of like akin to the death penalty. So now the other party, the Democrats, have to be questioned as to whether they're loyal opposition. The bottom line is you don't use the death penalty in a frivolous way and go after a presidency like that. It's a completely destructive to our republic. It's awful.
It is. I've talked about, as you might imagine on this show, so much talked about the Russia-Trump collusion hoax and then the impeachment and how it was such a sham. But right now there's an interesting issue, kind of a tug of war in Washington. Attorney General Barr and U.S. Attorney John Durham are looking into the term he uses, the predicate, the root of how this whole thing gets started, this Russia hoax gets started. And there are Republicans even, and certainly Democrats saying, look, the Mueller thing's over, we're going to move on. If you expose all these people, if you dig it out and you actually bring about indictments and accusations and let the whole world see what happened inside the FBI and the DOJ and then cooking up this Russia-Trump collusion hoax, you're going to end up causing the people to lose faith in the Department of Justice. So why don't we just leave it alone and move on? What do you say to that?
Because the people have already lost faith in the Department of Justice.
That's a true story.
And the FBI even worse. And the FBI is a shambles. I don't know how great it ever was, frankly, but certainly around the time that a bunch of guys, decided to ram with aircraft on 9/11 some rather large buildings, including the Pentagon, because perhaps partly the FBI was too sensitive to step on the tender sensibilities of some visitors here. Then you start to say the FBI is in a shambles and there's a serious problem. Here we are all these years later, they're still doing things like this. So I say expose it all, bring it all out, let's see what the problems are, let's change them, let's get rid of a whole lot of people, because every single one of them is replaceable. Every single one.
Whole upper echelon, whole leadership. Okay, so on to the next thing, this impeachment. And during the impeachment, of course, I think why many Democrats kind of backpedaled was because they realized we may have to have Biden's involvement with the Ukrainians and Burisma, all of that may become public knowledge.
God forbid.
Yeah, I know. Only Republicans have a problem with that. But
yeah.
I want to get at the question, so what do you think if, for example, Lindsey Graham is saying, let's have a hearing, let's understand what happened with Burisma? And so do you think that is something the Republicans should drop, or should they continue, at least the Senate side, continue to try to pursue what happened with Burisma, the Bidens, and the Ukraine?
I think they should consider continuing it at their own peril if they don't do it, by the way. I never thought I'd be agreeing so much with Lindsey Graham.
I know.
But, it just shows you never know, right? Life has some pleasant surprises in it politically, and that's one.
Absolutely. It is so funny. Well, when Lindsey Graham, in the midst of the Kavanaugh hearing, did his snarl speech, I can't tell you how my conservative friends were texting, who knew? I can't believe this. And he's still intermittently reliable. He's intermittently. Sometimes he's right there. Sometimes you think, what is the guy doing?
But I mean, post McCain, something changed. I don't know what, but I'm glad to see this new Lindsey Graham.
Absolutely true. So I want to have our listeners be able to find you online. Before, I meant to do this at the start. So your Twitter for your campaign is @E, and his last name is Ekstrom, EKSTROM, @Ekstrom for the word FOR for, @Ekstrom for Texas on Twitter, and you have a website, which is also
EkstromForCongress.com.
Yep, Ekstrom for, I have it right. Okay, and so because I think that this is one of those races. I mean, I get in the middle of a lot of things, I know, but one of those races where if you are a conservative and you see this is a seat that is a solid Republican district, it's like plus 13 or something. What is it?
It's plus 33.
Plus
I mean, the Democrat in the last election got something like 18% of the vote.
Okay, so you win the primary, you win the general.
Yeah.
Okay, and the primary is likely to go to runoff because of all these players.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. And so if people want to help you, I mean, honest to goodness, I want a rock-solid conservative. Oh, and by the way, I meant to mention, you did get the endorsement of Club for Growth.
I did, and I was endorsed by Andy Biggs, who's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Ron Wright here in Tarrant County, who I helped in his election.
Who was here last week.
Oh, was he? Good. He's a great guy and doing a great job, by the way. He's one I'm proud of that I helped. Mo Brooks, who's a personal friend and who's somebody I look to as a sort of mentor. From Alabama, the congressman. So yes, I am clearly the conservative. I mean, there really isn't any debate in the campaign about that by the others. And we have a motley crew of 15, some very good-hearted people, a couple of them that should have thought about it a little closer, and then 3 or 4 that are in contention. And the major difference is a lobbyist versus me, a businessman and a conservative, someone who's not proven in any kind of political field, and then a city councilwoman who's voted for tax increases, red light cameras. I don't know what else she's done, but
that's
none of
about
it's
enough
good.
to strike her off, whatever that is. Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, and that's why I got into it. I've never been looking. I think you know me well enough to know I didn't pursue things in a way that would be politically expedient to get elected. I've been pretty tough. There's a lot of people in this state who don't like me, and that's just fine with me too. I have a little circle of friends who like me quite well, and they know that I'm out to do the right thing, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Absolutely. And actually, I would tell our listeners, Chris used to live in this area or somewhere in this area. And there was for people, if you ask them, what do you know about Chris Ekstrom? One of the main things you always hear is he's a rock solid conservative. He points out when things happen that aren't right, that there are decisions made even by Republicans or positions taken by Republicans who are not conservative. He's a guy who'll just say what's true, which is one of the reasons I just love that. And also, I want to mention about Club for Growth and tell our listeners something. So I had this gentleman who is a big donor to a lot of campaigns, and he approached me at an event, a political event, to say, I want you to tell me, I get all this communication on all these races around the country, Senate races, House races, they're all asking me to donate. How do you figure out who the conservative is? He's asking me, how do I figure out? I'll tell you, one big answer I gave him was Club for Growth. And we've talked about Club for Growth before on the show. We've interviewed some people from there, but they look at not just who's, the smiley personality or, has a kind of a shiny resume, but who really at their core believes in the conservative values that conservatism stands for. So that's a huge thing to have their endorsement.
Yes, I'm really proud of that. And I used to use the word principles more. I've been using the word convictions because I think of that as coming, out of your sort of your heart and your mind both. And convictions are tough to pry away from anyone. And when people go to D.C., it is a swamp. The longer they're there, the more problematic it becomes. And Club for Growth looks for people that are going to pick strong staff and are going to be real conservatives and fight for the issues we care about.
They certainly do. And that Andy Biggs endorsement is also huge.
Yes, that was another proud one.
Yep.
Texas Right to Life endorsed me, Empower Texas, Texas Values. So people here have known that I was a legitimate and sincere guy trying to push the dial in the right direction and get us some traction. And we went through some very bad days in the Obama administration. He truly was the worst president ever by far. And we were under attack and siege. It's not over. We got a lot more to do.
Okay, I want to turn then. We have just a couple minutes left, but I was thinking through while you were talking about the questions I asked the candidates last night. I started off with one, and this can be our closing one, but the left is unapologetically advocating socialism. I mean, they have Bernie Sanders, at least is honest enough to say he's a Democrat socialist, but many of the leftist positions taken by the Democrat Party in their platform and their policy and bill proposals really are socialist in leaning. So this is my question, and this is a great one actually, because that was my launching question last night. I'll close with this.
Okay. What's
so bad about socialism for America? How would it hurt anything? Why is it wrong here?
Well, I just first want to say, Debbie, what happened to the slow boil? I used to hear about that slow boil. The what's wrong with socialism is it doesn't work. It's collectivist. It doesn't care about the individual. It takes the separation powers and it just destroys them. It's anti-constitutional. I'm not sure it's constitutional. I don't think the founders envisaged some sort of socialist paradise, but all of them turn into dystopias, every one of them. And the fact that it's still there just is a testament to the imperfectibility of man, because they can't give up on socialism. It's absolutely ridiculous.
That's actually a funny line. Evidence of the imperfectibility of man. Okay. Chris Ekstrom, thank you for coming in. I appreciate that so much. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Thank you so much.